Welcome back to the Revolt Gaming Podcast, the podcast where we talk about the decline of everything, but mostly video games. My name's Aiden.
And I'm Matt.
And the responses to the D&D episode were really positive, so we figured we'd keep that train rolling a little bit. Today we're talking more so about kind of like problems at the table, some horror stories in there, kind of solutions to classic problems at the table, as well as just, things that we've discovered and the way we fix them. So should be a fun episode.
Yeah, I'm here to have a good time.
What's really interesting is so I talked about in the last episode, like I've played D&D for like 25 years, but it was just with my family, and I didn't play second edition again until like freshman in high school, I think it was. So I didn't encounter any of these problems till later on. So I have like a long resume of playing D&D, but like I'd say probably the last like maybe like 10, 12 years or so, that's when I've had like the like other people problems.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was kind of all at once because I had to learn each edition as it went out, because like I was still playing second edition freshman year, but like fourth edition was out already. So
I feel like that's the problem when you play with like any new edition. It has to like, you got to grind the corks out a little bit. So it's easier to play something you're more familiar with. That's what I did. I played 4E for a long time, and then switched off of that, and then started playing stuff I actually enjoyed, because like 4E is pretty widely received by the community as like the worst edition D&D's ever had. I think with that experience though is what's got me into the other stuff.
I think what's interesting about fourth edition, and I may have said this in the last episode, I'm not sure, I can't keep track of my real life anymore. I have conversations all the time.
Yeah.
I think that fourth edition was really the start to something good, because I really like fifth edition, for example, and it feels like what they were trying to do with fourth edition just wasn't done well, but it was on the right track. And I do happen to think that, from what I know of just playing like the one or two sessions I played of it, it really seemed like it lent itself to DMing more. It's like if you wanted to make your own stuff, it was easier to do that because the parameters were so like laid out in front of you, basically. And that's the kind of the nuance of what fifth edition allows for this day. I really wish I had played fourth more, so I gotta gather like a better opinion of it, but unfortunately I can't contribute much to like that side of things. It's like I didn't play fourth very much. I played 2 sessions.
I have all the books if you want to like look at it and just see if it basically backs up what you're trying to say. Like if you feel that was truly the gateway to 5e. Yeah, like I said, even if you just like want to peruse the material, we can totally do that. That'd be fun.
Yeah. I think another thing too that's interesting is there's been this very clear line shown where like if you're an older gamer, for example, you're usually very narrative based. You're usually very like into the story, trying to build something with your players, but then it's kind of like the more like third edition and above people who got into D&D around that time that was not the case. That's where power gaming started happening. That's where the building started happening. And so it led to a lot of the problems we're going to talk about today. So
yeah, no kidding. So something else I've noticed, like the community's opinion on if you want to play the editions as they should have been played, you'll play 1 through 3.5, and then instead of playing 4th edition D&D, you play Pathfinder 1st edition, and then play 5e, because there was a big split at Wizards, which is why 4e is as weird as it is, because the original team didn't like what it was becoming, so they bailed. The original D&D team bailed out and made Pathfinder, which is why Pathfinder feels so much like 3.5, because it's that team.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought Pathfinder, when people talk about Pathfinder and 3.5, I'm like, it's the same thing to me. Like, it's just 3.5 plus to me is what it feels like, because they have those extra classes and stuff in it. But it really feels like with the Pathfinder stuff, like they leaned into the power gaming nature of 3.5 super heavy. Like they wanted to create a system where it's like you could do that more. Which I think may have contributed towards the 5th edition thing as well, because like you can be very strong in 5th edition, but things just are balanced extremely well.
Yeah, Pathfinder is not. I ran 2 sessions of Pathfinder as a DM, and the first session I did on Grid, second session I did all Theater of Mind, which went so much better because it really nixed people's abilities to power game, essentially, because it was literally based on like math and squares. But by taking that away from them, they had to force narrative options, which I think led to a better experience at the table.
Yeah.
It's fun. We did like a whole steampunk airship thing. It was really cool.
Oh, that's such a great setting in general. Like it's such a it's like weird, like airships have existed for a long time in D&D, but like you don't really hear about them often.
Mm-mm.
But it's like even the older editions of D&D, like they're airships. So
Yeah, well, the reason I bought the Advanced Combat book, and that had the Gunslinger class in it. It introduced the Gunslinger and the Samurai, which I was like, hell yeah, dude, I'm all about both of these things. So I asked people like what they were into, and a lot of my friends at the table were like, I want to do something steampunky. And I was like, well, what's more steampunk than airships? Let's do that. And then I pitched the idea. I was like, yeah, y'all are going to be air pirates. And they were all about it. First session, ran like dog shit. Second session, perfect.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think that there's, like I've talked about in lots of episodes as well, like with 5th edition, there's less rules. And so less rules, it leads to more opportunities to roleplay, I think, as well as just more opportunities to kind of like, you can only go so far with the math. It's like the math is only, it's a cutoff point. There's a cutoff point with it.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that like, you know, with less introduced to like the second session, like of course it went better. Like that sounds like, you know.
Yeah, something I had to keep reminding them, and like this is going to be a reoccurring theme here, is like the rules and the math, while concrete and important, are still just tools.
Yeah.
If you're prioritizing your math stats, then I don't feel like you're getting as much as these systems can offer you.
Yeah.
Especially as a player. Like, I've had good DMs and bad DMs, and what really sets that fine line for me is what are you willing to allow me to do based on, like, rule of cool, pretty much. Like,
yeah.
if I'm like really describing what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to make happen, are you going to lend a hand and help me make that happen? Or are you going to be like, well, it doesn't really say on your stat sheet that you can do something like that. It's like, dude, but why not?
Yeah.
Like, why are you trying to put rules on pretend, bro? Like, come on.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, my favorite thing to say when players come up with anything, like, sounds like kind of out there and just like, hey, you can certainly try, you know, we'll see what happens, you know. And I think that's something that people forget too, is that 10 is a average human ability score. Like, you have a 10 strength, 10 stamina, 10 whatever. So, like, when you are playing characters in D&D, like, you have anything above a 10, like, you are essentially, like, kind of superhuman. Like, not on the level of, like, I can do whatever I want, but, like, you're definitely specialized in some areas.
Yeah.
It's like, if you have a 20 strength, like, you're twice as strong as the average human. Like, that's insane to me. So, like, why couldn't you try something crazy? You know, why not?
Yeah, why not let people play?
Yeah, plus, I really like the elements of fantasy, things like Prince of Persia, for example, like the puzzles revolve around you running across the wall, and it's like, well, that's very hard to do in real life. Like, why couldn't you try it if you've got like a high enough dexterity or like a high enough strength or something like that? Why couldn't you try it, you know? Or Pirates of the Caribbean, like, I think those movies are highly entertaining just because of, like, the crazy shenanigans they do.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're not superhumans by any means, but like, they're trying crazy shit, and like, you can watch any Pirates of the Caribbean movie and be like, oh, they rolled really high in their skill check there.
Yeah,
like, that's what it is.
That's the cool thing about roleplay. Like, sometimes it just works, and you don't have to explain it because the dice say that works. And that's my favorite element of role playing. Like, people forget very quickly that this isn't just a thing of throwing numbers on a sheet and trying to get through something. You're playing.
Yeah, I mean, the book has always been introduced as the world's greatest role playing game. It's very, very clearly meant to be both. Your numbers obviously matter to determine if you can do something, but you're supposed to also care about the story. Like, there's a reason why, like, modules are written as a story as opposed to just, like, a list of things to do.
Yeah, it's not a checklist.
Yeah.
You know, it's... There's so, like... I stated last time how I felt about module play, and I do enjoy playing modules on occasion, but I would much rather be in someone's head.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that. I think everyone has a story to tell, and D&D is a great vehicle for that, if that's how you're trying to tell it. Yeah,
no, I completely agree. On the subject of horror stories, so what is your, like, if you had to, like, do I don't know, like, sitting around the center or in a circle with your friends, like, let me tell you a story, you know, like, what's your, like, go-to story? Like, what's your worst horror story?
The Session from Hell. Yeah, okay. So we had my initial group of friends We all took turns DMing, and then when it came to my turn, I found that I was really good at it. So everyone just asked me to sit there forever, and I really enjoyed doing it. So I did. A buddy of mine said, hey, there's this campaign I want to run. I've come up with it. I've come up with the world it's in. I'd really like to do that for the next few sessions. And I said, okay, totally fine. Like, you want to sit in my chair? That's totally fine. So he did. Unfortunately, being the... I'm going to put the blame on the media he was consuming. He made the campaign incredibly cinematic, which was cool, which meant he was talking a lot. The problem was he kept our group divided on purpose, which is cool. I wasn't as invested in the characters my friends had made. So it was... We played for probably 10 hours, and the whole time I rolled my dice twice. Like, he was so focused on what everyone else is doing because my story wasn't important yet. So I got to sit there, and we had a strict, like, no phones at the table, like, be involved, basically. And that's really when I got proficient with 4th edition, because all I was doing was reading the rule book. Because it just didn't matter. It wasn't like when my time came to actually get to play, it was closed session. Like, well, hey, sorry you didn't get to play this time. I was like, well, dude, this really sucks because I gave up a Saturday night for this. Like, I got prepped to play. I gave you my character plus 3 pages of backstory on, like, this really interesting character I thought that I had made. And you chose to make my character's appearance basically entering a fighting tournament, which I got to play 1 bracket of, and just annihilated the dude I was fighting. Yeah, it was really, really depressing. And all of my other friends had a really great time. I didn't. Like,
yeah. Tournament arcs are hard to do in general. It's like, I think it's great in anime, but like to do it in D&D, like it's got to be really, really done well. How I've handled it in the past, the first campaign I ever like officially wrote, which I would say like it is finished. I finished it. I'm done with it. It starts with the tournament arc, but like I don't have it like one at a time. Like it's a battle royale basically. Like everyone gets to play, right from start to finish. There was another element to it where they were in this city where there was a underground fighting arena. And how it worked was they were all separated. They weren't fighting together, but they could see each other. It's like they were all separated by like cages, basically, or like bars, or like, you know, chicken wire, whatever you want to imagine it as. And basically, in order to advance forward, you had to beat your opponent, and then like they pulled the gate open, you could run forward, and like that's how that worked. But they were aware of each other the entire time. We had initiative order and everything, so it was still like everyone was still playing.
That's really cool. The backlash from that, I explained to him like how I felt about it and how I feel like the tournament could have ran better. And then the next time it was my turn to DM, I started the campaign with the tournament, and I ran it much cleaner. Like, everyone was involved in this thing, and they all did it. I had their fights going simultaneously, but in different pits, and it was a winner take all kind of thing. Naturally, it came to like the 4 people that I was playing with. They were in a, like, this has never been done before 2v2 match, and then right before I had them roll for initiative, something else happened, and the tournament never finished. That was the whole deal. So that was like the overall, like, it really set the tone for the entire thing, because they all wanted to find out who actually was the strongest, and that was really cool. We got to finish it at the end, but like that's how that campaign closed, which was really cool.
That's cool. Freeze frame.
Yeah, but that also caused tension in my group, because
really,
the guy who ran the campaign was like, I feel like you were just trying to upstage me for not getting to play. And I was like, no, that's not at all what I was trying to do, but I'm just saying I could have done this better. And this is how it went. Like, I'm sorry that the evidence spoke for itself, but yeah, like, that's just the way it was, man. Like, that really sucked. That was a really, really bad night for me. We did like 2 more full campaigns with that group, and then we haven't rolled dice together since. Like, been a lot of ups and downs with that group. You ever been at a table with somebody who's too drunk to play?
Yes.
Yeah, that I got. So this would probably be my number 2 horror story, and I still don't know how to handle this one other than if you're too intoxicated, I'll stop the session and we're done. I bought all of the books for 4th edition again because it was relevant when I was in the army, and got all my friends together, and they were all super down to play. They all went to do their normal stuff during the day, but we were meeting back up at one of my friends' house to play that night. And I was like, yeah, 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, everybody needs to be here, and we'll play for a few hours, because they'd never played role-playing games before. So everybody showed up at the house except for one guy. And that dude called me like 30 minutes after we were like 8:30, like 30 minutes after like when we were supposed to start, and had me come pick him up from a party. And we stopped at Burger King and got back to the house. And I was like, the whole time I'm asking him, like, are you gonna be good to play? Are you gonna be good to play? And he's like, yeah, totally, I'm fine. I haven't had that much to drink. By the time we got through Burger King, I was like, okay, this is why you called me to pick you up. You're shit-faced. He was like, yeah, I still want to play. Like, let me just get this food. I'll get this food in me and we'll play. We sat down at the table. He ate, like, everything in his Burger King bag. And he's like, yep, I'm too tired. And he went to bed. And just killed my whole session. I was like, man, that really sucked. And I never got to roleplay with those guys because of that one event. Like, that really sucked, too.
We used to do a stream where we drink and play D&D, and like that happened a lot. And like I've been that player before. Like I was literally fucking drunk without like realizing it. Makes a lot more sense now, but like, you know, it just happens sometimes. Apparently I have a gift to DM when I'm completely fucked up. Like,
oh, nice.
I've been really drunk before, like remembering being really drunk, and my friends were like, I had no idea you were drunk, and I was like, really?
Oh, really?
Like, are you being nice about it? I was like, no, I thought you were fine. And I was like, all right, cool. Well, like, it's good to know when I'm focused. I'm good then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, man, it'd be tough to pick a horror story as, like, my number one. I think it'd have to be more recent times when I've played D&D. Because, like, I've tried playing D&D randomly, sporadically throughout the last couple of years as a player. So I was like playing with a friend one time, and like it was kind of like you were saying, like we didn't really get to play because his girlfriend, like somehow her character was linked to every single element in the game and knew every single NPC you could imagine. It's like we meet someone around, like, oh, I know that person. Like somehow she knew everybody about everything, like whatever.
Oh, no.
And so like it happened so many times where like we just sit there, like all the rest of us would just sit there and like listen to her talk to this person. Anytime we would try and interject or like be part of the scene at all, like we got completely shut out. And I felt bad because like a few of the other members there, like they were new. This was their first D&D experience, and like after having so many bad D&D experiences, I'm just like, man, like I hate this is your first attempt. Like this is your first attempt.
Yeah,
like,
that sucks.
Because this is something you're gonna remember forever now.
Yeah, that's gonna be what you associate now.
Yeah,
that's horrible for new players.
Yeah, because that's what it is. It's like when you have your first time playing and it's not great. Yeah, and interestingly enough, like the inverse of that story, like my first time, I'd say my first time playing D&D, not with my family and like spreading out and meeting new people to play D&D with, like it was essentially that as well, because like the DM would basically just like streamline everything, and we'd like say we want to try and do something, he'd be like, okay, it happens, and then like it just happens and there's nothing else to it, just happens, problem solved, and we have to move on. And just like, well, wait, hold on, like
no conflict.
Yeah, there's like no conflict,
no risk.
I mean, there was conflict, but like it wasn't, it was more so just like you had one of the rules lawyers there arguing with the DM constantly.
Oh, great.
You had two of our other players. It was their first time playing D&D, but they were talking to each other, not even being part of the game.
Oh, yeah.
And then you had me, who was like paying attention and like trying to do stuff, and it wasn't happening. And then you had the power gamer, who was just like, basically that's why it kept happening that way. Was like I would try and do something. He'd be like, wait, what if we do this instead? And he'd like immediately pitch it, and DM like, yeah, that works, and just moves on from there. And I was like, okay, cool, this sucks.
Yeah, I'm a side. I'm basically an active NPC. Yeah, I've definitely had sessions where we bring new people to the table, and they're just not. It's like they don't really understand what they're signing up for.
Yeah,
that really sucks too. We had a new person we brought to the table, and we spent a ridiculous amount of time making her character. Like, I'm good with like a solid like 45 minutes of somebody building a character they really care about, or like even doing the prep work on their own and like really putting in the time.
Yeah.
It was like 2.5 hours of her building her character because she wanted it absolutely perfect, and that would have been great. Her character was really, really well built for the campaign. But the entire time she was on her phone. Didn't know anything about what was happening. Like, multiple opportunities got missed that because she was playing a druid that she really could have helped out the party, but she was on her phone. And then she would ask, like, really rudely too. She'd be like, "Is it my turn?" Not right this second, but coming up soon. Okay, then she'd go back to her phone. I'm like, are you serious? Like, that really sucks. We had new people at the table then too, and again, like you were saying, like that was their first exposure, and those people don't play because that's what they believe D&D is. It's like, no, it's not. It's way better than that.
Yeah, I did this with my fiance when I first got her into it, and like we just did a one-on-one session, and I feel like that's maybe a better way to handle that. Like when it's your first time, or when you have new players, basically, it's just kind of getting a feel for what they want to do and what they're going to be like. Because some players are really shy, and so when they're at the table, they're not going to be as active as they might be, or like they're not going to have as much confidence to kind of talk as much as they will, and they end up being side characters in that regard. They just kind of sit there and just like, okay, I'll do the party does,
Yeah.
So I think giving them an opportunity beforehand to kind of establish their character is a really good idea. Working to like a 2-person mini session, like whatever, like just something that allows them to kind of get a feel for it without it being like throwing them to the wolves, basically. And it's just like, after all the many horrible experiences I've had in that regard, that's why I feel like that's the better way to do it.
Totally. I'm of the same mindset. The world that I play in most is the one I built, and I like to give people a taste of, number one, the system. If they're new, great. If they're a veteran player, even better, because they can get things quickly. But yeah, I like to give them like a little sample. Like, this is how this world operates. Can you hang? I've had a lot of success doing that. Being like, yeah, this is a little sample, little morsel for you to have, and then if you want to come back, like, please do. But understand it gets more complicated with more people. But yeah.
Yeah. You said your group beforehand, like, you don't really game with that much anymore.
At all. I don't game with them at all. And none of my previous groups, actually. They've all ended horribly, except for when I was running with Blake and his group of friends. I moved, so that's why I don't. But everything else has been like, basically went from awesome to dumpster fire really quick.
Yeah,
and I don't have time for that.
That's what I was going to ask. Would you say it's because of just like scheduling conflicts, or is it that you just have a disconnect at this point with those people?
I have a real bad habit of committing really hard to a group and feeling like I'm not getting that back.
Yeah.
Especially as a DM. Like, I've got all this stuff set out and all these cool things I want to do. And then those things don't get utilized, or people come ill-prepared for the session, or unfortunately, I'm to the point now where I don't like playing with new players. There's a lot of stuff that I don't want to go over for the 1000th time. Like, the big one being, like, the last brand new player that I played with. Like, look, I appreciate you telling me as the DM that you're consuming food while we're on this journey, but unless you tell me otherwise, I'm assuming that that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I had to constantly break that down for her. Like, that really sucked. Like, that made the whole experience really, really lame. Or we talked about this last time, people trying to do Critical Role copies, or people trying to do things they've seen before. It's like, why don't, like, I know you may not be experienced in role-playing, but there's a lot to offer here. Why don't you try to do your own thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Not every animal in the wild is something you can tame. Some of them just want to kill you. Yeah,
that is such a... I'm really tired of that cliche so much. Can I tame it? Can I make it my pet? No. I'm kind of biased towards pets anyway. Like, I hate running pets because... Not because I don't mind managing them. It's just that they always cause such an issue in the party because... I don't give players special treatment. So it's like, if you have a horse, great. Your horse can die. It's going to happen. Especially if you decide to take it with you to like a perilous place. It's like, you probably shouldn't. Or like this little animal you have or something like that. Like I ran a session where two of my players were hellbent on having pets. I was like, you can have pets later, but like I really wouldn't suggest it at the start of the campaign because I knew it was going to happen, and I was just like, you know, hold off on it. Maybe see if you still feel that way after a few sessions. Just got to get a feel for the world. They're like, no, we really want pets, and I was like, okay, fine. It did not matter at all that they had pets, and they ended up getting like the whole point of that first session was to, like bring everyone together randomly and like because it was a very world divided kind of thing. So everyone got brought together, and then they all got pinned for something that they shouldn't be pinned for, and like they're in prison, and so they didn't have pets anymore. And I was like, that's why I said you should probably wait for, you know, give it a bit.
Yeah, that's.
And it's the same with horses too. Like I had a player who like really wanted a horse, and I was like, "Yeah, you can play by horses." He's like, "No, I want like a fancy horse," and I was like, "Okay, what fancy are you thinking about? Tell me how you go about this." And we pretty much broke it down where he's like, "Well, you know, I want to persuade that soldier over there to like give me one of their horses. Like they're specifically bred horses." And I was like, "Okay, sure, let's see how that goes." Rolled really well on this persuasion, so I was like, "Sure, no worries." And he's like, okay, like, don't tell anyone about this, but 100 gold will give you one of our horses, and I'll just make something up about, you know, it got lost or something like that. And it's like, great. Few sessions later, they were traveling up, like, you know, like that scene in Lord of the Rings where they're traveling, like, the mountain pass before they turn around to Moria? It was basically like that. And, like, beforehand, I was like, hey, you know, there are stables here. You guys can leave your horses here just to come back for him, basically. He's like, no, I'm bringing my horse with me. And I was like, okay. And that horse froze to death and died because it could not handle the constitution checks needed for that environment.
Exactly. Like, another great Lord of the Rings reference I'd like to bring up. What is the first thing they do when they get to Moria?
Oh, they let their horses go. They let the ponies go. Yeah. Yep.
Because that's what responsible people will consider. They'll weigh the risk. This brings me to a very important point. I found this specifically in D&D and internet culture. People get real out there attachments to weird things, and pets and mounts being one of them. Yeah, it's really hard. Like as a DM, like I'm gonna live by the dice on it. Like if your pet dies, I'm so sorry, but that's the way it shook out. Yeah, and it puts you in a really precarious position, like I said, because people get these attachments to things, and then you have to be the one to take it from them, and then you feel like an asshole.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying is it's not the managing of the pets, it's the backlash. Because, like, you know, players spent 100 gold on this horse and it died and you got real fucking pissy with me. And I was like, I gave you opportunities to stable your horse in a safe place. Like, and the thing is, like, my fiance is part of that group. Like, she did stable a horse. She felt like a normal horse. And she's like, I'll stable it here. And she still has her horse. Like,
oddly enough.
Yeah, like, that horse actually became, like, a very big staple of her character. And, like, it turned out really well. Because, like, when they finally got, like, their own land and stuff like that, like, they have, like, a little pasture for her horse and everything, like
perfect.
You know, it got a happy ending basically because she took care of it and like made sure it didn't get in dangerous situations. And that's kind of the thing is like one of my friends said that like if a player plays a Cavalier Knight in his campaign, like he's not going to target the horse. And I was like, okay, so get a horse and you're invincible, basically.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm sorry, like realistically, if like you're on a horse, people are going for the legs. They're gonna try and take that guy off his horse, especially if he's like doing cool Cavalier shit. And they're like, hey, he's fucking us up. Let's take his horse down. That's gonna happen in battle, and I'm not gonna shy away from that. Like that's going to happen in battle.
It's why my system is built the way it is. I have a real love for like historical combat. Like that's, I'm not gonna lie, that's what my system is based around. It's a combat system with elements for story versus D&D, which I think is a balanced system. It has good parts of both. Things like that happen. Like there are weapons that, again, I've drawn from history. It's like, what is this sword for? It's for cutting the heads off horses when they charge you.
Yeah, that's what an Adachi was made for, right?
Exactly. The Adachi and Zweihander from Germany. That's what it's for. It's an anti-cavalry horse. Anti-cavalry sword, sorry. Yeah. That's what those things are for. And they exist in the world because they existed in history. That is something people don't consider, I think. Like, they get really into the fantasy element, which more power to them. That's great. But if you play somebody who's running a little more hard-edged or more historically accurate, yeah, your cool Cavalier shit, that's a devastating weapon on the battlefield. I'm probably going to kill the thing that's trying to kill me the most. So, sorry. You have to dig a big hole because I'm killing that horse.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, and it's just you get a lot of backlash for that.
Totally.
Being like, oh, you killed my pet. I'm like, you put your pet in a dangerous spot. I'm sorry. Like, it's not a combat pet, or it's not a combat horse, or like anything like that. It's like you put it in a dangerous spot. And you have that as well. Like, I feel like people just like the idea of certain things because the number one thing that happens, this is a common idea or common occurrence. People will ask, oh, can we get horses? And I'm like, yeah, actually, in this town, you totally get horses.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, well, make sure you've got to buy a saddle, you've got to buy your horse, you've got to buy food for your horse, make sure you have enough food per day to feed it because they require nourishment. And they're always like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, it's a fucking animal. You have to take care of it. It's like you can't just have a horse and it's fine forever. That's not how it works.
No, like it's now, Timmy, that's a lot of responsibility getting a dog.
It is, yeah. And it's like, I understand it's a fantasy world and like you want it to not be as heavy in the realistic stuff, but it's like I don't bend the laws of reality for my players. I never have and I never will. And that's why, you know, like that whole like, oh, I want to tame it thing. It's like that has never worked and it never has worked. Because people are always like, I'm going to tame it. I'm like, all right. And it just tries to rip their head off.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a little bit different if your backstory is... Like, if you do me a really good backstory about, like, something you found that was abandoned or, like, something like that, like, fine. I'm all for it. You know, we'll have mechanics for it. But still, same rules, it can die.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, I mean, even rangers who are built around having an animal companion, like, their pets can die. There's rules written about it. Like, if your pet dies, in the event it dies, like, you know, X, Y, and Z.
Again, I don't mean to pin everything on the player, but there's a good and a bad way to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're playing, like, a ranger-esque character and you have an animal tame and, like, that's very important to you and then something bad happens to it, as a player, you can choose to get upset about it, or you can choose to fold this into that character.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, they're obviously very upset about this, and now they've got, like, maybe, like, hated enemies. Like, if it was killed by a group of goblins, like, now they have a hated enemy.
Yeah.
Now they have a quarry. Like, they're really pushing that. They got an extra grind. I think that is the better way to handle it versus getting pissy with your DM. Like, I'm... developed this skill very early to roll with whatever information is given to me and being like, cool, well, how can I potentially spin this to an advantage, or even like I could make this an advantage, but that doesn't make sense for the character, so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to cause the extra stress.
Yeah.
I like sitting at a table and being a good participant, you know? Like,
yeah.
It's not just my story, it's everyone's story.
Yeah.
But if there's like little nuggets I can take out for my own personal stuff, like I'm gonna take that too. Like, I think that makes it more fun for everyone, because like if they see you do that, like say you're a veteran player and you've got somebody who's pretty inexperienced, and they say they see that's the way you handle it, maybe they'll do it in the future. That's good for them, you know. It's good for everyone. That's good table development.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like, I want to go back to what you were saying before. It's kind of what led me to these thoughts, and so I want to go back to it real briefly. Like when you're talking about, you know, not getting out what you're putting into the game as a DM, especially when you're preparing stuff and you're not getting the same energy back. I think that's a really, really important concept because, you know, people forget that the DM is a player as well.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the most toxic things that I thought about DMing when I first started doing it was that my job as a DM was to do whatever the players wanted and just make it work. That is true to a very, very small extent. But largely, you know, you're allowed to have fun too. You're allowed to kind of write what you want to write and do what you want to do, and just, I think that's why session zeros are so important, because like you have to see if you jive well with your players. I think a lesson that people really, really need to learn is that like even your best friends in the world, you can't play D&D with them sometimes.
That's totally true.
You know, it's like, it doesn't mean you stop being friends with them. It just means you have to admit, like, yeah, I can't play D&D with you because, like, the way you want to play and the way I want to play, it does not work well. And I have a friend who's just like that, where, like, we've tried playing D&D together multiple times, and, like, it usually starts off really well, but then that kind of, like, normal, like, kind of competitive, like, rules lawyer, power gaming nature starts to emerge after a few sessions, and we start butting heads constantly. And it got to a point where like I cannot play D&D with him. He's a very, very dear friend, but I can't. We just don't mesh well together because he is a numbers guy. He cares about the numbers aspect. Even when he DMs, he's the same way. even to an extent where it's like it's kind of like reverse power gaming. Like he'll try and make our characters as like mid-max as possible, where he's like, well, if we do this for your character, I'm like, it's not what I want to do with my character. Like my character needs to have flaws. He's like, well, if you do this, I'm just like, no. So on both sides of that, him as a player, me DMing, and vice versa, like it just doesn't work. But it doesn't mean we're not friends. It just means we cannot do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that there's a maturity with that with other players as well. You know, any group I join for the first time, I'm always like, hey, I'll give this a few sessions, but if I'm not feeling the energy, I'm going to drop out. Yeah. It's not a personal thing. This just isn't the experience I want. And that's what it is. And that's my rule for gaming with new people now. And that's what I say. And I do. I give it a few sessions and we'll see how it goes. I think more people need to realize that. And, you know, again, the DM is the player too, you know. During that session 0, the conversation should be had like, what kind of experience are you looking for? This is the experience I'm looking for. Here's the kind of adventure I want to run for you guys. This is the kind of, you know, interactions I'm hoping for in terms of, you know, the level of care you have for this. You know, what are you guys looking for? Yeah. I think that works out really well. Like I run a very serious most of the time kind of game. I like kind of like dark horror, so I kind of, or dark fantasy, so I definitely go in that direction. I have a very bad tendency of writing like George R. R. Martin level of NPCs where like they're always going to die no matter what. Yeah. And like I love when my players get attached to certain NPCs and it's like, oh yeah, they're dead. Sorry. Like
I've had a very negative character experience with NPCs, so I put what is necessary into them, and that's it. Like one of the things that irritates me most about I dread when my party goes into towns because they want to talk to everybody, and it's gotten to the point where like I will give them like default NPC responses from them and be like, oh, well, like what else do they know? And like it's like, well, the NPC just turns around and leaves. Like, well, why? Because you're bothering them and you're not important. Like just let them go about their day. Not everybody has a quest for you to do. Yeah, the quests will be pretty obvious. And I think for streamline purposes, I think that's fine. Yeah. Like, I don't think I'm taking anything away from their experience. But how many times have you had somebody go into, like, what a brief trip into town should have been turns into the rest of the session? Like, you ever had that happen?
I've had it happen both ways, where it's a very negative experience, but I've also had it happen where it's a very positive experience. One of my favorite things, and I think any DM who wants to run a narrative story like can relate to this, like one of my favorite things is when, as a DM, you don't have to do anything. You just get to sit back and your players role play. And the only time you have to interact is when you're like, okay, well, in this case, go ahead and roll for that. But beyond that, you don't have to do much. And that's great. And so on the positive side, yeah, I have had that happen. But also on the negative side, I've had it where it's just like, it's literally like the nitpicky, like, okay, this person didn't say anything, next person on the list. I'm just like, why do you care so much?
Yeah. Like, I've had to fabricate subquests for things. And I hate doing that. I hate, because when I put time into, when I'm DMing and things like that, I put time into it. Like, the things I care about that I'd like them to see and what my world can offer, I can't give you that level of quality when I'm having to be like, okay, and just come up with something on the fly. I don't feel like it measures up. So I'd rather just not do that. Yeah. Like, this is the stuff that I have. And it's not like I'm writing a railroaded story. I've got, like, option A, option B, option C, option sub A, option sub B, like, based on where it's going to go. Like, and I can kind of feel the table, and I stop having to do as much prep work as I get to know a party, but...
That's definitely true, and I was going to say that next, is, like, it does take time to feel things out. Like the group I have now, like the people who stay anyways, people who've been able to stay, we've had a lot of people leave just due to scheduling or like other busy things in their lives and it just hasn't happened. But like the people who have stayed, like we have a very good group now because you know, we took the time. Like so we played my campaign for like 2.5 years before we finished it.
Nice.
It's like a long time to like game with people. And yeah, like now we kind of feel like I said, I like to run kind of like a more serious story. I just like serious tones. But I also know my players enjoy like, you know, revelry every now and then. They also enjoy kind of like a lighter tone. So I ensure there are some NPCs that kind of like have that tone. as well as certain areas kind of have that tone. Whenever they want to kind of like, you know, go off the beaten path a little bit, like I indulge that a lot more now than I used to, because it's like, okay, sure, you know, like I can work with that. A solution I have for the subquest thing is I kind of write that into the town. Nothing in my world is random, I would say. It's like I would never fabricate like, oh yes, on the horizon there is actually a town, unless I plan for a town to be there. And so something I do with like prep work is I don't go into a lot of detail with it unless there's an important NPC or important quest or something like that that's supposed to happen there. I do like a general tone for the city. So if it's like a town or a city or whatever, there's a general tone to it. And it's like, so in general, these citizens are kind of surly, or in general, the citizens are kind of on edge because there's stuff going on in the world that they're not super into. New people coming to town, they're stressed out about that, or they're like cautious of that. That's the tone of the city. And so that way I can know, like, even if I have to make up something on the spot, which you have to do a lot of the times, I know that when they talk to them, I can be like, okay, how they respond to that? Oh yeah, well, they have X, Y, and Z personality trait. This is how they would respond in general. And it kind of goes from there. A very simple way I've explained this in the past is like I give them a demeanor of like positives and negatives. So like, for example, this is the example I give for everyone just to kind of explain this technique. Is like you look at like a guard, and it's like guard A loves apples, but he dislikes it when you're a dick to him. So when you're trying to persuade the guard, if you're like, hey, would you like an apple? Also, will you help us? That's a positive. But if you're like, you're going to help us, or if you know it's good for you, that's a negative. And it's just a very easy way to manage NPCs, because you don't have to put much effort into it, but like it allows you to still, you know, it comes across very organic.
Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like you've got like a template?
Yeah, kind of like a template. I just like to figure out what a person's demeanor is, or like a village's demeanor is, you know, because I mean you see it in fantasy TV shows, movies all the time. Like people come to town and everyone's like, what the fuck is that? You know, like it makes sense. I kind of, like you were saying, like I don't feel like every single citizen is going to be like, oh boy, new adventures, you know, like
no,
that's not going to happen. And matter of fact, I've gone to great lengths before to like make a very creepy town where they reacted exactly like that, where they're like, "Wow, welcome to the town. We're so glad you're here." You know.
There's a video game that helped me build setting like that. That's Witcher 3.
Yeah.
Like every area that you visit in that game reacts to you vastly differently.
It's got a tone, like an overall tone. Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason I asked about the template, because that's what I run. I have a template built for myself. Like, it's basically a quick NPC generator. I would love to say that I came up with it, but I ripped it offline.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's like basically set based on setting of environment, how would they react to these situations, and then like here's like 5 traits, and you just kind of quick roll, pap, done. It's like, okay, that's what this person is like. And sometimes when I'm generating adventures or like quests or like some filler content, I use that. Like I'll have like 5 or 6 of them generated, and then I'll just pick one and be like, oh, this guy, all right, cool. And I'll just kind of like weave him in there and be like, okay, yeah, or weave her in there or whatever. I have an NPC, she's reoccurring, and I swear I made this based on roles, but I accidentally made your stereotypical quote-unquote dumb blonde. And she's awesome. She's like low intelligence, massive strength. She's usually a barmaid, and she's the one who breaks up the adventurers' bar fights.
Nice.
She's really good at that. Yeah, her name's Gertrude, and I love her very much.
I mean, I love when NPCs that you make, like I said, on the positive side of things, like I love when NPCs you make up like become like very important, or more important than you thought. Like I've had NPCs try and do the whole like mysterious like give you wisdom and leave things, and my party's like, no, like we like you, you're coming with us.
Nice.
I'm just like, oh, okay, no, but maybe I'll show up again because you made an impression, you know, that kind of thing. And that's something I take consideration even with my major NPCs. That thing I explained earlier, I go even deeper with that. Not only do they have personalities, thoughts, objectives, goals, dislikes, likes, whatever, but it's like, how would they react to the party? You know, it's like, if they say something that would like interest them, they're like, oh, maybe I should like keep an eye on you, kind of thing. But yeah, for a very basic level, I just have a template. I guess a template's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's a template.
But yeah, and you know, kind of what you said, like, don't feel ashamed of ripping it offline, man.
No, there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Yeah, no, like I talked about in the last episode, like, I think a good DM learns from other DMs and is not afraid to seek knowledge, and especially if what you have been doing has not been working, you should just look for solutions, because there's something wrong with that. No one's going to call you a hack or like anything like that. And kind of the opposite, like, if you only mimic other DMs that you've seen on social media or anything like that, especially in today's age, because there's a lot of online, you know, D&D personalities, I'm more likely to call you a hack in that regard if you're just like very clearly imitating somebody.
Totally. I have an important distinction to make here.
Yeah.
If you're seeking tools online for something, don't take systems, take theory. That's been my biggest success. When I try to borrow systems straight across, it's really hard to tailor make them for my world. But if I borrow theory, like, oh, consider doing it like this. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, I was trying to make my because Dezodia has its own map. Like, I can say that I've built the own map for my world. I was trying to make it seem realistic, so I was looking at like world maps and stuff like that, and they're like, oh, well, you should do this, like, you should have like these 5 biomes and stuff like that. And I didn't have success building the world. But then I found this thing, I believe it was either on Reddit or Reddit's sister site, where somebody said when they were generating continents, they would take their entire dice collection and they would drop them onto a piece of paper and trace it.
Yes, I've heard of this.
Yeah,
yes.
They would trace where the dice fell. And then certain numbers meant different things. Like consecutive teen numbers was a mountain range, or these little dice that fell to the side, those were islands. Or like, and that's how I built the Zodia. I built it off a map trace like that. And I was like, damn, that's cool.
That's very cool. I have heard of that before. That's very, very cool.
It's a lot of fun. I enjoy map making, so that was a big thing for me. And then like, when I had like my physical features set, that's when I started building continent lines. And I love wordplay too. So the actual, I think it's for a 10-sided die. The actual mathematical name for that is an icosagon. And I was like, nah, that sounds like a dwarven city. So I straight borrowed that for the Iron Mountains. Icosagon is their home city.
That's really dope.
Yeah, man. I love little nods like that and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Nods can be great. I mean, there's blatantly ripping off something and like making a nod to something, or like kind of like adding something interesting, or you know, anything like that. You know, not on the topic of D&D, but like, you know, with Final Fantasy, like they've got a lot of stuff that, and a lot of the games do it too, where like it's a nod to like Norse mythology, or like a nod to this or a nod to that.
Homage,
like,
dude.
Yeah, those are great. You shouldn't be afraid of that, you know, as long as you're genuinely doing your best and like trying to be creative and trying to create a unique experience. Like, you can borrow from things, you can do whatever, you know, it's fine. A DM that I've had a lot of trouble with as a player, just because he's very competitive, and I don't play with him anymore, and I wouldn't even say we're friends anymore. He was very competitive, and like, he was a very bad winner and like a horrible loser, pretty much.
Oh, yeah.
And it was bad because as a player, he would constantly complain if like something bad happened to him, or like if something happened, and like he had tried to get the other players at the table to be like, well, I think he's like singling me out and like making me look bad.
Oh, really?
And I was like, no, man, like, that's not what's happening. I never talked to him face to face about that, but the other players came to me and they're like, he really feels like you're doing this, and I was like, no, dude, like, I'm not. I am. His rolls just were not good that session. Things happen. Like, I'm sorry he feels that way. I wish he would talk to me about it. And as a DM as well, like, he's the exact same way. It's like when you present an ability your character has, it's literally followed by silence, and he's like, well, I just don't think it would work that way. And I'm like, that's how it works, man. I'm sorry. And he'll, in 3.5 especially, it was grappling mechanics. Everything in their mom was really good at grappling. that was like his default way of like, well, how do I get this back under control? And it's like, oh, it grapples you. And I was like, oh, okay.
A bid for control. Look at you go.
But my point about that was not complaining about that necessarily, but my favorite session he ever ran was he was being very, very chill. He was not under the pressure of like trying to make up his own world. He was very clearly making it up on the spot, and he told us at the start, he's like, I want to try an evil campaign, but it's going to be just made up on the spot. Like, I don't have things planned out. And we were all like, yeah, great, let's do it. So yeah, we went to the city of Stormwind, and we were on a quest to kill the dragon of Nixia. You know, it all worked out. Like, it was very clearly the names from World of Warcraft, but it was a fun session. Like, it was a really fun session because there was just none of that stress there. And it, you know, we weren't playing World of Warcraft style game, obviously. Like, it was its own thing. I think we had like necromantic orcs attack the city or something like that.
Cool, man.
Or no, they were like zombie orcs, but it was like necromancer was the bad guy or something like that.
Oh, nice, zombie orcs. Cool.
Yeah, but well, you know, the same thing happened in that session though. Like at the beginning, where like suddenly the zombie orc tried to grapple me, and I was like, all right.
Great.
But all in all, that was a really good session, and I was sad we never continued that campaign because I was like, no, that was really cool, man. Like, I had this grand scheme where my warlock was trying to become like a full demon, like basically obtain demonic powers and become a demon instead of a human that he was born as. And there was this whole thing where like he encountered part of the subclass I was gonna do says that you have to make a pact with another demon and you have to do them a favor to obtain this, but then like you basically like skin the demon, like wear its skin and like become demonic.
Oh, dude.
It was like really fucking dark. So the demon that I had encountered in my backstory, this is before the session started, was he was like, okay, like I want you to give me 99 souls, but then save one soul. And I was like, okay, cool, I can roll with that. And so my whole plan was that like the reason why we had to kill this dragon was because like it was just being a dick to the region. And so I was gonna go up to the dragon and I was gonna be like, okay, well, here's the thing. We won't kill you, and you can still go destroy the city. But after that, you leave us alone. And that was going to be my thing. I was like, they can kill the city. There's the souls I have to give, but I'm not going to kill the dragon. That's a soul you can spare. And that was kind of my plan anyways.
Wow, that's super cool.
Yeah, it was a great session. Like that was actually one of those ones too. Like, you know those games where like you just kind of start and you play for like 5 or 6 hours?
Yeah.
That's what that session was. And there was some shenanigans. There was some bullshit, like typical him stuff. But overall, it was a very good session.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Like, I love off-the-cuff stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that speaks to me. I love that.
Yeah, and I think the part of that, too, is with his personality, I think the whole point of that was just to say that, like, when he wasn't taking it too seriously and putting that pressure on himself to be, like, 100% original, it flowed much better.
Yeah, that's a common DM problem. Like, I would say your 2 biggest ones is, like, assuming every hat there is to wear in D&D. Something I did to take the pressure off myself, I hate dealing with initiative order. Pardon me.
Super fucking unprofessional.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Now you're fired.
Okay. Well, it looks like this is my last podcast. I hate handling initiative order, so every session I'll assign somebody. I'm like,
oh, really?
Yes. I'll be like, you're going to handle initiative order, so you go ahead and figure that out while I'm setting up the combat. That's really helped me out. Learning to take off a couple of the DM hats. One DM hat I will never put back on is I am not a babysitter.
Yeah.
I am not. I'm also like, I hate table conflict when it's anything like besides the game. Like, I can handle game conflict constantly, but so often I feel like people default to the DM if there's an issue. Like, I wasn't even playing at my own house, and somebody spilled beer on the carpet, and it was up to me to handle that. Like, that's who they passed the buck to. And I kept saying, dude, it's your house. Like, it's your house. You live here, not me. Like, you decide if you think they've had enough to drink. You decide if it's time for them to leave. Like, that's not on me. It's like, well, I mean, you're kind of like running the thing right now. It's like, yeah, but I'm not your babysitter. Like,
yeah,
I won't do that anymore. That's up. Like, if it's my house, sure. Like, if that's my hat to wear, then sure. But as just like a general default peacekeeper, that's not me.
Yeah. I will say that I do agree with like not babysitting, but I do think that there's nothing wrong with, as a DM, just being like, if a player is a problem player, it is a shitty thing to do, but be able to be like, yeah, I'm gonna have to leave the table. Like, I think you're not a fit for this group.
That's game conflict.
Yeah,
that's something I can't handle.
Yeah,
it's talking about like,
oh no, I understand what you meant, but I just want to make sure, you know, it's okay to be that person though, in some regard. But no, I mean, just what you were saying, it's not your house, it's not your responsibility.
Yeah, no, it's a really awkward situation.
It is. It probably was game breaking too, where it's like, we're in the middle of something here, why don't you fucking handle it?
Killed the session.
Yeah,
like that was enough to kill the session because unfortunately somebody else was his ride. So yeah, Galen did ask him to leave his house, and there went 2 of my players, and then he just wasn't down. So we played Soul Calibur. that's what happened. It's like, I want to play something fancy with swords. I'm like, how about Soul Calibur? I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. It was not a great idea.
It was not a great idea. He was wrong.
Same thing I tell everybody if you ever want to play Soul Calibur with me. I'm like, you do realize you're all deciding who's going to come in second, right? You're all fighting for second place. That's fine. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to specifically sitting behind the screen and running all those things.
What would you say, what do you think is like the most important element that the DM should handle? Like, if you had to pick one thing they should handle, and like they need to really make sure they're on their game with that one thing, what do you think it would be?
Managing flow. I would say taking improv classes really helped. Being able to, and that helped me as a player too, like not rejecting a premise. If you present with me an idea, I can fully commit to it. Like totally, that's how that works. 100%. I think as a DM, you should definitely be the most prepared.
Yes.
And be willing to lead by example. I think is very important as well. To sit down and provide the environment for good role play. Like, that's your job. You're to keep this like storyteller and keeping things moving forward. Another great thing that I'll take from I think it's the 3.5 book is you basically need to delete no from your vocabulary. It's very hard for me to tell a player no. I'll present them with alternate solutions, but not kill their idea dead, because I feel like if you tell somebody no a bunch of times, they're gonna stop trying things, and I'm not into that.
Yeah, I think that's a really tricky line to go, because like I said, I used to have that belief that like my job was always to be like, whatever they say, make it happen in some way. And that's where you get situations like that where someone's like, oh, I want to tame that animal. And it's like, well, I can't fucking say no, so all right, you can try. Or like you do, or something like that. But I think that there are, in managing the flow, like I think there's ways to kind of say no without saying no.
Yeah.
Like one thing that there's a session I think about often, because it was back when I was like first getting back into DMing, and I was like very like not sure if I was doing it right and if I was like in the right place, because I hadn't played for a very long time. But like they were going through this part of the city that was like currently being attacked by these monsters, and so for whatever reason they decided to go into a house, and I was like, okay, cool. And like every house they went into after that, like one of my players was like, oh, I want to go through the drawers and look for stuff, and I was like, fuck, do I have to like make it where there's something in each drawer, because like they're looking for it, so I have to give them what they want. And I kind of went back and forth on stuff like that, and like I still think about that session, because I was like, no, I should have just said like realistically they're not going to have stuff in there, like everyone's not going to have valuable stuff. It would have been very easy to just be like, yeah, you find a bunch of clothes, you know, you find a bunch of unmentionables, you know, things that. Oh, this person seems to be using it for storage, you know, there's a bunch of books in here or something like that. You know, instead of always being, I think the default was I was like, oh, okay, go ahead and roll. Oh, you rolled high enough. Yeah, you find a pouch of money.
Oh, damn.
And it was just like over and over again, and I was just like, fuck.
Yeah.
And that's bad flow too, because like, you know, players taking the time, like, I know we're doing this thing right now, but I'm gonna go rummage through this whatever, and it's like, okay, like, yeah.
Do we really have time? That's a big one.
Yeah.
I like time is a very awesome thing to use to your advantage as a DM. because like a way to circumvent situations like that, it's like you could do that, but time's a little rushed right now. Make that a factor, build drama with it. It's a good tension tool too.
Yeah, when something goes on for a long time, that's what I start to do. It is generally my players actually keep up a pace very, very well. But when I get to a situation like that, especially, I'm just like, oh yeah, for sure. I'm like, okay, you guys are running out of time. Like, we need to make a decision now. And if no one makes a decision, I'm like, okay, so this starts happening. Everything's a moving piece essentially.
Yeah, time is great for that.
Yeah,
it's a good flow piece.
It is, and I mean, like, what you were talking about too, like, at the beginning of the episode where you were talking about that session where you didn't get to play.
Yeah.
Realistically speaking, like, not everybody is going to. It's a classic thing, like, don't split the party, but it's going to happen inevitably.
Yeah.
And especially if you're doing that thing where maybe at the beginning of the session, for example, not everyone knows each other, so you have to manage that aspect before everyone does come together. And that can definitely lead to players just sitting there doing nothing for long periods of time until you can link them together in some way. Same thing with the party being split after they know each other. During the session, they end up being split up or whatever. You can do a split party very, very well as long as you as the DM are like, okay, you've had enough, we're going to go to you now. Okay, you've had enough, we're going to go to you now. And you just keep going back and forth with that and make sure everyone is involved in some way. And maybe it was a tournament arc for you where, like, your fight just didn't come up or whatever, but you still, I imagine as a player you want to do other things still. It wasn't just combat, right?
Yeah, he had me sitting in the lists. That was the worst. Like, I was in the combat ready room the entire time. Nothing cool to look at, nothing cool, nobody cool to talk to. It's like, oh, well, you're just prepping for your tournament. Like, dude, this really sucks.
Yeah, I hate that right there. I don't like when a DM puts words in my mouth or says, like, what I'm doing or what I'm thinking. I like to narrate a sense of, like, not how they're feeling, unless it's a mind control effect or something like that, but I like to, describe a little bit of, like, yeah, like, you kind of feel the adrenaline hit your body in this moment when these swords clash or whatever. Or, like, hey, you start to feel, like, a little bit nervous because this thing that you attacked, it's not going down like you thought it would, and there's that moment of hesitation. But I don't sit there and say, like, well, you're nervous, so you can't do anything.
Yeah.
There's a very, very different way to do that, and especially when it's like, you're doing this, and it's like, that's not what I want to do. I think that taking control of your player's hands is, like, a very, very big thing that you should just not do. Now, I will say this, it does require trust, and that's a really big one, is, like, trusting your players and vice versa. We talked a little bit about the last episode, like, trust is a huge component. And trust can get broken very, very easily. Like, if you, to my friend's credit, he felt like I was targeting him, that probably broke trust with him. Yep. I wasn't, and that's probably due to his personality, but, that was something that, he put him on edge. He had said, like, at one point, he's like, well, I always make grapple-based characters because I can't survive in your games. And I'm just like, well, you're constantly doing dumb shit, man. Like, what do you want from me?
That's also, that's a problem, too. Like, if you're constantly having struggles doing something, A, bring it up to the DM if you feel like you're being slighted, or B, maybe consider your approaches.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not the world. Maybe it... this is going to hurt some feelings, but sometimes it's you.
Yeah.
Sometimes it really is you. That's... Yeah.
No, sometimes it's the DM, sometimes it's you. That's very, very true. There's this very key ability to feel the tone of the game. It's like when it's very, very serious and you're the guy being like, I'm gonna go fuck this person or whatever. It's like, you gotta chill, man. Like,
calm down.
That's not what's happening right now. That's a tone breaker, So yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, read the room.
Yeah. So I understand you have some issues with the system.
I do. They're minor, but I think they might be preference.
Yeah.
The biggest one for me is I am not of the philosophy that weapons kill people. I'm of the philosophy that people kill people. So in the system that I've built, damage is a stat. It's like your damage, lethality, potential that you are capable of delivering as a person with no matter what it is that it's in your hands.
Yeah.
To me, that makes more sense. I don't like the idea that this magical sword is doing my killing for me. I like to know that, you know, the analogy I like to give is, if you put me and Bruce Lee in a room together, and you give me a like finely crafted sword, and you give Bruce Lee a chopstick, I'd probably still die.
Yeah.
You know, he's lethal with his hands, with whatever weapon he's got. He could probably kill me with it. Me, not so much.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the logic base there. I do understand that 5e is very balanced. We had an offshoot session talk about that, which really put things into perspective for me.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's bad. It's just not the way I prefer to word it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things with 5th edition that you have to kind of make assumptions about, because it's just what the math makes sense to presume. You know, like the way damage dice are done, the way your attacks are, and everything like that. It does feel like proficiency plays a key point in it. And it does feel a lot like, you know, as a seasoned adventurer, you're probably more experienced than your average person. That's a very easy presumption to make, but I mean, to your credit, nowhere in the rules does it say that. Nowhere in the rules does it say like that's a thing. But it's just, you know, and I could be wrong. You know, I don't work with Wizards of the Coast,
right?
But that's how I interpret it, and that's what makes sense to me.
That's a fair interpretation. Like the way you spell it out for me, with like the first level with the magical weapon versus a 5th level with standard gear, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
like that tracks perfectly for me. But like I said, for me, it might literally be semantics. That's just how I like to word it. I feel like that makes more sense.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily like 20 systems either. Even though my system is ran off of a single D20, I found that I like D10 systems better. I like that varying degree of success versus failure, or I like the idea of botching or super successes too. I like those concepts a lot better than just rolling a D20 and hoping for the best. Again, that's pure preference. Like, because again, we're accomplishing the same ends. And just going about it differently.
It's just different paths to the same solution, basically.
I'm not saying either is good or bad. I'm just saying that's what I like.
Well, I love 5th edition. I'm a very strong advocate of 5th edition, but I've spent a lot of time with it. Like, when it was first introduced to me, I was like, whoa, that was fucking awesome. Because I was a player at the time. I was like, that was fucking awesome. And I just started, like, consuming all I could about it. Because I was like, I want to learn this system inside now. Because I really like it. But I think with 5th edition, you have to kind of be okay with making assumptions. Because, like we were talking about earlier, like there are people who are very, very by the book, and they're just like, the rules say this, so you can't do this. And you have players who do that, and you have DMs who do that. I think both need to be okay with pushing those boundaries a little bit.
Totally.
Your character sheet may not say you can do a fucking running backflip up a wall, but there's no reason why you can't try.
Why not?
Same with the DM, you know, like a rule may say this, but you know, why not stretch it a little bit? Why not change it a little bit? Why not, you know, modify it a tiny bit? And you don't have to make that a house rule forever. It's just in that moment. Sure, why not? We'll say it works like this because, you know, we'll see how it works, basically. That's what keeps things from getting stale. It's what keeps things from getting really, really boring and are very, very, like, just rolling dice, like you said. Just like rolling D20 and hoping for the best.
Yeah. You keep away from that RuneScape element of fighting, which I've seen so many sessions devolve into.
Yes.
It's like, well, this thing has way too much health for what we're trying to accomplish here. Combat is dragging on. I like interesting combat. I like complicated combat.
Yeah.
Which is why my system is built around that concept. When D&D is ran right and ran as it should be ran, it's great. It's wonderful. I just love it to death.
Yeah.
But when it's ran poor, like that, I think was the idea when I was building my system. Is I want this to be very difficult to run badly. Like if you understand it and you can read the stat sheet and you can build things to kill off that same sheet, you're pretty well in the clear. Like you can make any combat interesting. Just like diversify what weapons they're using, diversify their tactics. It's pretty easy.
Yeah. What would you say is like the worst house rule you've ran into? Like you as a player at the table, like the DM has a crazy house rule.
I don't know that I've come across any.
Oh, that's okay. Just me then? Alright.
Yeah.
No, I'll tell a story for Matt, and I'll tell a story for me too then.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I think that the worst two I've come across is, I wasn't a player, but I heard about this, and so one of my friends was talking about how he let his players tame a pet.
Oh,
And
God,
I was
okay.
like, all right. And he's like, yeah. So the ranger got really mad because like their pet was better than the ranger's pet. And I was like, yeah, I'd be mad too. Like,
Yeah,
are you
totally.
serious? And he's like, well, he took the time to raise it. And I was like, what do you think a fucking ranger did? And he's like, now you're giving them a free ability that a ranger has to specialize into. And like, that's bullshit. Like, I'm with your player. That's bullshit.
Yeah, it's total horseshit.
Yeah, like I'm not for that. I think the one I dislike the most I've heard recently though, and I think it's more so it's not the idea of it, or maybe it is the idea of it, but it's just how close-minded I feel like it is. So one of my players is running a game and he presented it to me because one of his other friends who do this came up with it. And he was like, yeah, so when you roll a critical hit, in 5th edition already, how it works is you just double your dice. So if you roll a d8 for a longsword, you roll 2d8 instead. That's how you do your critical hits.
That's fair.
And so the house rule that his friend came up with was like, yeah, so the first damage dice is just maxed every single time you crit. And I was like, that's really stupid. For multiple reasons. Because like at that point, what it spells out is you have a problem with RNG, not the rules. You have a problem with RNG.
Yeah.
And aren't we playing a game where you roll fucking dice to see what happens? And that's what a lot of house rules do is they eliminate RNG. But this bothered me so much because, like, for one thing, if you take a standard fighter, for example, with like a +3 of their strength, and they roll a critical hit. So standard fighter will say is using a longsword, so it's 8 + 3. So that's 11 points of damage. That's their maximum damage potential. On a critical hit, they roll 2d8. So even if you max that first number and they do 11, you can still roll a 1 on the other dice. So it's 12. You're not doing more damage. It doesn't fix that rule at all. It doesn't fix the issue you have there. But another thing what really bothered me about it was the lack of creativity. Because the reason they came up with it was they're like, well, doesn't it suck when you roll a critical hit and it doesn't do as much damage as like when your standard attacks or like even less than that? And it's like, yes, I agree, that does suck. However, I think you as a DM, there's creative solutions to that. You might roll a critical hit and roll minimum damage. It doesn't mean it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
You could very easily be like, oh, you actually like hit this person's like gauntlet so hard it cracks a little bit, and now they have lower AC. They're easier to hit. Or maybe you're fighting a huge creature and like you know, the sword or dagger or whatever goes deep into their leg, and it's like you got a critical hit. It doesn't seem like it dealt a lot of damage, but like now they're hobbled. They're moving slowly. They have disadvantage on this, disadvantage on that. You know, there's creative ways to handle critical hits, and I think even if I would do this, even if you rolled like very high on your critical hit.
Totally, yeah.
It's like, if it makes sense and like in that narrative moment it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, why not, dude? Like, why not change the rules a little bit? Nowhere in D&D does it say that if you roll a critical hit that can happen, but why not? Why couldn't you do it?
That's again, I agree with you, very close-minded. Critical hit does not always mean damage. It means something of note is happening here. It's a good point to like flesh out your monster a little bit, or one of the rules I stand on in D&D is the rule of cool.
Yeah.
Like, you roll a critical hit and you want to do something extraordinary, like, even if like the damage isn't great, why not? It's your crit. It's pretty much what I say at the table. It's your crit, man. This is your time to step into the spotlight and do something rad. And I'm not saying you're going to kill the damn boss. That's not the deal here. Because critical to me does not mean damage. But if you get a chance to do something cool, man. Like, really tell me how it goes down. Even better if you kill something with it.
Yeah.
Like, really tell me how that went down. Like, how did you kill it?
Yeah, I love doing that. You know, I have a point of contention with that though, because Matt Mercer has this whole thing where it's like, how do you want to do this when then someone kills a boss? I've been doing that since I was like fucking 10 years old.
I've never listened to an episode of Critical Role, so that irritates me to know that.
So it irritates me. The point of contention I have with it is that whenever I do that at a table where I'm like, hey, how do you want to end it? They're like, oh, just like Matt Mercer. And I'm like, no.
Just like me.
Yeah. You know, and that's something I didn't talk about last episode with Critical Role copycats, but there's that too, where like you automatically assume as someone is trying to copy Critical Role.
Nope.
That's a big issue. But yeah, just on that point of like, describe how you kill the boss. Like, I've been doing that since I was like 10, and now when I do it, people are like, oh yeah, just like Matt Mercer, and I'm like, no, fucking no.
My first knowledgeable DM that I played with did that for me, and that was way back in the day. So yeah, no, thanks, Trevor. I directly stole that from him.
Yeah, that's fine. You can do that. I mean, I believe Matt Mercer's been on record to say he's took it from someone else anyways. Like, it's not solely his thing. But it's just that point of contention of, like, immediately assuming I'm doing something I'm not. I'm like, that's not... No, that's my thing. Like, it's my thing because I decided to do it when I was younger. Like, I'm not saying it's unique and that only I could come up with it possibly ever in the world. Of course I haven't. But it's like, I'm not trying to copy anyone.
Oh.
So, yeah. I don't know. But yeah, just be creative with your crits, man. That's kind of the point I was driving at.
Yeah, do something extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you think about realistic combat, like if you have a sledgehammer, like a warhammer or something, you might hit the dude's arm really hard and like it's not, it might crack a bone or something like that. It doesn't mean that you're gonna like deal a ton of damage, but it's gonna fucking hurt. They're gonna have an impact. There's gonna be something there. I've done that on normal attacks, like when, I hit a player, but I roll minimum damage. I've done the same thing where I'm like, yeah, you feel this hit you square in the chest, and the wind is knocked out of you briefly because it didn't deal as much damage, probably as it was hoping, but it hurt still. Like the wind is knocked out of you momentarily. Yeah. And in certain situations too, I've even been like, yeah, go and roll like a check for me and just see how you handle that. How do you handle like getting the wind literally knocked out of you?
Yeah.
Like it makes sense, and like with cool players, they'll understand that because they'll be like, "Oh shit, I got hit really hard." They won't be like, "That's fucking bullshit." Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, rules lawyers have their place, but not at my table.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, man. That's I think I've said my piece.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think they're great opinions. If you have to leave our viewers with one thing, what piece of advice would you say is most important that you'd give our viewers? Listeners, I guess no one's watching us, but
I would say that if you're a player sitting at a table, understand that trust is very big between you and your DM, and it's also give and take. Don't be afraid to have a good time. That's probably the biggest thing. Like full committal, get invested. Like really, really get into it. But also respect everyone's time. So
yeah, absolutely. And I'll add on to that too. Be creative, whether you're a DM or a player. One of the greatest gifts I've recently received from my players is like I usually am one who describes every detail of their attacks, the monster's attacks, whatever, and they've recently began to be like describing their own attacks or describing their own movements or something like that, so I don't have to do it as much. It's been great. So be creative. But yeah, so if you enjoyed that, definitely subscribe, share this around, join the revolution by hitting that subscribe button and sharing this around, add your voice to ours, and never ever stop looking for your own blue chicken.
That's right.
Bye.